When the puppets are done with their play, they're put back in the box. Stop Motion is a Shudder original from IFC Films and comes to us from writer-director Robert Morgan and writer Robin King. Check out the respective IMDb pages for the full listens of their work. And this centers around a stop-motion animator in a movie called Stop Motion. It's absolutely bonkers. This involves stop motion. I figured it'd be animated or maybe even CGI. But yes, it involves a stop-motion animator named Ella, 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 who has a very domineering mother that just wants this last film to be absolutely right. The mother is not doing all that well. She has some health issues. Those health issues end up becoming really exacerbated or perhaps even masturbated to the point that she can't use her hands, and then she ends up in the hospital. And then Ella, I already did that, is trying to basically pick up the pieces, move on with her life, so to speak. She has a boyfriend, and she has people in her inner circle, so to speak, that maybe care about her or maybe just really take pity on her because she's been through so goddamn much. And yeah, Ella is dealing with a lot of shit and this trauma and all this, but she really wants to complete this film, mainly to stick it to her mother, but she also wants to make her own films with blackjack and stop-motion hookers. In fact, forget the stop-motion. But yes, from there, we basically have a psychological body horror, psychosis-filled movie that centers around basically Ella and a couple people around her. But it really centers around Ella's just disintegrating, mental state. I mean, she really is not doing all that well. It's pretty obvious there's something a little bit off about her from the very beginning. Whether that has to do with the fact that her mother has basically just ground on her to the point she doesn't even want to ask her mother a question, to where she has a problem even connecting with her boyfriend. She has a problem connecting with other people. She has this just not far away look, just this look of just she's in her own world. And being a stop motion animator, with how tough that is, that can really consume your life. And she wants to make this project work. She really just wants to do great things. And honestly, when you're an artist, you will dive into your art. You will let your art consume you. You will get to the point where you feel like you're trapped in your own little world and that everybody is out to get you, and that perhaps maybe they are, maybe you're just nuts. Or maybe you're trapped in a horror movie that involves a lot of fucked up shit going on, and that's where stop motion basically lies. It has all that stuff there. So Ella is played by, and I wrote this down, Aisling Franciosi, who was in The Nightingale. And back when I was, really just starting to dive into more movies, I was doing a lot of multi-movie reviews. I was doing either 2 movies, 3 movies, sometimes a few, 4 or 5, a couple times mixed together, Human Centipede together, as it were, in just short, bite-sized chunks. And one was of The Nightingale. I don't remember when I actually ended up reviewing it. It was a few years ago. But I will say this. Aisling was tremendous. Absolutely tremendous, and I see why people praise The Nightingale to the heavens, but said it was really hard to watch. And if you have problems with assault, do not watch that. Do not watch that movie at all. I had thought about maybe going back and doing a full review of that. I don't know if I can watch that again because it's really tough, but it's really incredible. It is one of the best and hardest to stomach horror movies of that particular decade, because I think it came out in 2018, 19. Nevertheless, it's really, really goddamn good. So I was looking forward to this. I knew nothing outside of the fact that it was called Stop Motion and the description that I read. Stella Gonnet, who was in Spencer and his band, other stuff, she plays Suzanne, the mother, that is. And then you have Tom, played by Tom York. Apparently they didn't think Tom was smart enough to actually, understand any other name. I kid, of course. I'm sure he's a lovely individual, but just call him Tom the Piper Son, stole a pig, and away he went. And then, as she is trying to pick up the pieces here, a little girl gets introduced, and then some more fucked up shit happens. And look, outside of the title and outside, I didn't even know it was a Shudder original. I knew that IFC Films had something to do with it, which right there probably should have told me Shudder had something to do with it, because they have either a partnership or possibly a, very, very full frontal, just, penetrating relationship, as it were. But IFC Films has done some good stuff in the past. And knowing nothing about a movie that got released in theaters is rare, very rare. Reminds me when I saw When Evil Lurks. And it turned out to be one of my favorite horror movies of last year. Actually, my favorite horror movie of last year. One of my top 5 movies of last year. When Evil Lurks is fucking tremendous and really hard to watch. Okay, let's get to the positives of stop motion. The stop motion work is very good, and the body horror effects, makeup effects are very good. There's some real great craftsmanship here. I mean, really, there is a lot of really good stuff technically that you can dive into and sink your teats into. I think that's how that goes. I don't know why you'd sink your teats into that. And there's a bit of atmosphere, and there really isn't much mystery because it's kind of all just laid out there. But yes, it is about dealing with trauma. It's about dealing with all this stuff. And relying on Ashlung to be this, this beacon to basically just draw everybody towards her. Basically this, central character. She's up to snuff because she's really good, and she's been good in other stuff. And I just always go back to The Nightingale because that's a career-defining performance. That's a performance you can hang your hat on. Unfortunately, the positives kind of stopped there because this movie, while I understand what it was trying to say and there were some nice ideas and the storytelling was okay, the problem is also you don't really have a reason to care about any of the characters. As great as she is, you don't really have a reason to sympathize with her character or feel bad or any of that because you kind of think that maybe she was just always fucked up and all this, and maybe her mother messed her up even more. It's really hard to tell. It is about dealing with trauma. You should raise your kids right. You shouldn't raise them wrong. You should raise them in the best way possible. But the thing is, you don't really care about any of the other characters like the boyfriend or the boyfriend's sister. There are a few weird moments, like a moment at a party. There's an opening with rave strobe lights. That's a warning for photosensitive people. And while I appreciate what they were trying to do, this movie kind of missed the goddamn mark as being anything more than a concept with some neat technical stuff. The critical score is very, very high. And I was really looking forward to it. I only checked what the critical score was just before I sat down to watch this. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, whatever. They've been, I haven't disagreed or I haven't agreed with the critics all the time. And then there were some critical reviews that were a little bit, not necessarily harsh, but they said they understood what they were trying to do, but a lot of it felt familiar. And a lot of this does feel familiar. And unfortunately treads so much familiar ground, it's ending up in its own rut. And it doesn't fully click. Outside of the technical stuff, it really does not work. Now, I will take this over Unwelcome because Unwelcome is really goddamn shit, even though it had some neat little effects. This at least leans more into the body horror and the stop motion stuff, which a movie called Stop Motion, you might as well. It's getting a limited theatrical release. I'm glad Shudder's getting more clearance to put their movies out in theaters. But you probably could wait until this comes out on Shudder. I didn't care for it. I didn't. I only saw it in a theater with a few people. And from what I gathered, I could just sense in the room that nobody really was having a great time. Talked to a couple of the employees that were about to clean the theater. Talked about horror. They appreciated the shirt I was wearing at the time. And I just say this. If you're not really a fan of body horror, you're probably not going to like this. If you're not a fan of psychological damaging stuff, you may not like it. If you're not really a fan of stop motion, why the hell are you watching a movie called Stop Motion? It is in theaters currently if you want to check it out, or it'll be on Shudder here in a little bit. I'm getting into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So yeah, Ashlung is really good. We open with this Cyclops story, and I think it's this. I don't remember the actual whole goddamn thing, but that's the story the mother is working on. The mother's very overbearing. There's a lot of fucked up shit going on. She doesn't sleep. She barely gets time to go spend with her boyfriend. Who is there for her. And I mean, take a look at Ashlung. She is very beautiful. You would obviously want to take care of her. I mean, look at her. She fucking looks incredible. And then you have, the mother ends up suffering a medical episode, I believe a stroke as it were. And just the fact her hands weren't working, she was elderly. And she ends up in the hospital. The daughter can't be, Ella cannot be in the goddamn deal anymore. She can't be in the house. Maybe the house was foreclosed. Maybe the house was a police crime scene. Maybe she just didn't want to be there anymore. She stayed at her boyfriend's house for a little bit, and then he got her an apartment somewhere, possibly in the same building. Maybe, I don't really know. It didn't look like the same building, but It's free of charge, I guess, or something. They don't really explain this, and then she starts making a stop-motion movie, or she's trying to continue the Cyclops one. This little girl shows up that is so obviously either an incarnation of her trauma or an incarnation of her mother's controlling behavior. So so really both, that it's obvious that this is like she needs that self-control, or she needs that type of control. She can't do things on her own, even though she's going to make it after all. And then she's basically just going more and more psychotic. This little girl tells her a story about the Ashman. He's the Ashman. He's the Ashman. And this little girl comes up with ideas instead of just having, the animatronic, or, the claymation, or not claymation, but the stop motion stuff, and moving everything and making it look like they're moving like the Ray Harryhausen stuff. No, this girl comes up with the idea to maybe use, like, meat for the people, a meat puppet, as it were. And then things get more messed up when, she tells the story about the Ashman. He knocks, he comes, throughout 3 nights. I envy him because I can barely come more than once. That was gross, but I'm just going to roll with it right here. And basically, he knocks, he sees the girl. Then the next time, he touches her. What's the third time? The third time is he consumes her. I'm just going to say that right there. There is a funny point, at least to me, where the sister sees what she's working on and takes the ideas, because she does stop motion stuff, and later is using that story for her own art. And then Ella goes absolutely insane. This is after partying at a particular place, not taking drugs, even though the sister suggested it, and seeing a weird Dead Silence type puppet, only with a very UK influence. I mean, seriously, take a look at that goddamn thing. And there was a lady with eyeballs painted on her eyelids like she's Jeff Hardy. I'm sorry, Mike Adamley took over my mind. That is a deep cut for wrestling fans that only, really longtime fans will get. She is seeing all this weird stuff. Then her mother says the opening, line that I said, when puppets are done with their play, they're put back in the box. Symbolic. She keeps calling her puppet. Gee, almost like she's her puppet and everything. It's like they're hitting us over the head with it. Again, great stop motion animation and great body horror. Very good stuff. And Ashlam is no doubt a great actress and fucking gorgeous. But this did not work. This was a one-performance movie with no characters. You didn't care about any of the other characters. At one point, she gets pissed off, and when the boyfriend and her boyfriend and the boyfriend's sister try to take her out of the apartment, because I guess she's finally losing her goddamn mind. This is her last resort. She throws her boyfriend down the goddamn steps, or kicks him, beats the shit out of the sister with the camera deal, just the camera tripod. This is after she's been having dreams of being a little, wax, or not wax, but clay, whatever, molding clay wax deal. Just this gooey creature that's being pursued by the Ashman. And she's having this stuff back and forth because she's wrapped up in this thing so goddamn much. And then she ends up finally confronting the Ashman on the last night. And he ends up eating her and consuming her all, and now she's fucked. She's totally goddamn fucked, and that's it, pretty much. That's really it. I don't really know what the fuck they were trying to go for, other than trauma will consume you if you let it. At least that was an interpretation. Again, good body horror, good stop motion effects. I didn't think that it worked all that well. C. I'm going to give it a C. I'm going to give it a C for the technical aspects. And for Miss Franciosi being just great and just beautiful and everything. And there are good aspects to it. But overall, there's so much stupidity here that even the ideas that work don't end up, really clicking fully. Oh, and at the end, after, the stuff with the Ashman, she crawls in a box. The puppets go back in the box after their play's done and shuts the lid, and that's it. So yeah, C. I'll give a C for the technical stuff. Does this get a recommendation? Not necessarily for theaters. You could probably watch it at home. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Wentland. I'll see you soon.